Many years after graduation, Leo had already achieved great success and fame. At the class reunion, someone tried to match me with him. Leo, do you still remember the little follower who used to always trail behind you? Since neither of you is married yet, why don't you give it a try? He slowly raised his left hand and smiled without any emotion. I'm married. Everyone was greatly surprised. Only I kept my head down and didn't say a word. I couldn't figure out why Leo was still wearing that ring. Clearly, cutting so sold my sigh. We had already divorced 3 years ago. The class reunion was halfway through. The class monitor pushed the door open and said in an excited tone, "Look who's here." I followed everyone's gaze. My breath caught in my throat. After not seeing him for 3 years, Leo seemed even more mature. When greeting others, the corners of his eyes slightly curved, and he exuded an aura of calmness and composure that came from years of experience. I heard that he had recently been named an outstanding young entrepreneur in the city. At a young age, he already had a net worth of over 100 million yuan. While everyone was chatting, I continued to look down and replied to messages. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Leo take a seat in the empty spot diagonally opposite me. His gaze casually swept over me, not lingering for even a moment. However, I noticed the particularly eye-catching white flakes on his shoulders because of his black windbreaker. It turned out that it was snowing outside. My phone kept vibrating. The female classmate sitting next to me couldn't help but tease, "Serena, is that your boyfriend? Is he checking up on you so closely?" She had a loud voice even when we were at school. I instinctively looked diagonally ahead. Leo was still talking to others. He seemed completely unfazed and turned a deaf ear to what was said. I smiled and shook my head. "No. It's my mom. She's urging me to go on a blind date next week." Most of the people present were around 27 or 28 years old. Some had already established families and careers, while more, like me, were facing the pressure of their parents urging them to get married. Several girls emphasized and started complaining. "My mom is urging me to go on a blind date as if she's in a hurry to breed pigs. As long as the genders match and the two pigs look healthy, everything is fine." Serena, it's not that I'm saying this, but you have to keep your eyes peeled. Most of the good men nowadays have already been snapped up within their own circles before they even enter the dating market. At this moment, a chubby male student suddenly slapped the table and stood up. "Leo, Edolo Sai. Do you still remember the little follower who used to always trail behind you?" His speech was slurred, and it was obvious that he had drunk too much. Leo didn't say anything. The man thought he couldn't remember. "I'm talking about Serena, who bombarded you with more than a dozen love letters back then and confessed her love to you in front of the whole school at the high school graduation party. Because he had gained weight. It took me a while to recognize that this person was the PE monitor of our class. He had no other hobbies before except for trying to matchmake people in the class. Sure enough, since neither of you is married yet, why don't you give it a try?" In an instant, everyone's gossipy gazes all fell on Leo and me at the same time. 10 years had passed, and it turned out that everyone hadn't forgotten about this. They were all looking forward to Leo and me giving an account of this love story that had run through their youth. No matter what the final outcome of the story was, Leo finally looked at me in a proper way. When our eyes met, he slowly raised his left hand and smiled without any emotion. "I'm married." These 4 words were like a thunderclap out of the blue. Everyone was greatly surprised. "Leo, when did you get married? Why didn't you inform us brothers when you had the wedding? You've kept it such a secret? I haven't even seen a photo of your wife on your WeChat moments." Only I kept my head down and didn't say a word. I couldn't figure out why Leo was still wearing that ring. Clearly, cutting faciled my sorry. We had already divorced 3 years ago. Thinking about it now, it seemed inevitable that Leo and I would end up getting divorced. Between us, there was no proposal, no wedding, and we didn't even take a single wedding photo. The year we graduated from university, his mother was diagnosed with cancer. I carried a 10-pound fruit basket and went to the hospital to visit his mother again. When I was about to leave, he suddenly grabbed my hand outside the ward. "Serena, let's get married." This unexpected sentence was like a pie falling from the sky, almost knocking me dizzy. Afraid that Leo would change his mind the next second, I eagerly agreed to him. The day I got the marriage certificate with Leo was an ordinary weekend. There weren't many people at the Civil Affairs Bureau. The staff took a photo of us. Come on. The man should lean a little closer to the woman. The man shouldn't keep a straight face. Smile like the woman. Good. The photo on the red background on the marriage certificate became the first photo of the two of us together. After the oath-taking ceremony, I skipped the status of being a girlfriend and directly became Leo's wife. At that time, Leo was in the initial stage of starting his own business. In order not to be in a long-distance relationship with him, I gave up a fairly good teaching position at a private school in another province. Following his suggestion, I prepared to take the exam for a teaching position within the province. Perhaps he knew that he had wronged me. When we went to the jewelry store to buy a ring, Leo promised me that he would hold a make-up wedding for me once everything was stable. So I made up my mind to be a considerate wife and thoughtfully chose a plain ring that wasn't that expensive. After all, what I cared more about wasn't material things but Leo's sincere feelings for me. After getting married, we rented a 40-square-meter house together. Although the space wasn't large, our life was rather sweet. We would hold hands and go shopping in the supermarket on weekends like all young couples, and embrace each other and fall into ecstasy late at night. A year later, his mother passed away. He held me in his arms and shed tears for the first time. Serena, I don't have any family left. Leo's parents had divorced a long time ago. His mother had high expectations for him and had always had a strong desire to control him. Many people thought Leo was aloof. Perhaps he was also longing to be loved deep in his heart. So I comforted him again and told him, "You still have me. I'm also your family." Leo began to immerse himself in the company day and night, using high-intensity work to relieve the pain of losing a loved one. Because of his irregular eating habits for a long time, he suffered from a stomach problem and was admitted to the hospital. Since then, I started going to his company to bring him meals. That was the first time I met Vivian. By then, Leo's business had already made some progress. His startup team had successfully recruited several like-minded alumni. Among them was Vivian, Leo's direct senior sister majoring in computer science. Vivian not only participated in many software design competitions during her school days, but also had rich project experience. Leo was very grateful that she resolutely resigned from a large internet company and joined their team. I stood outside the door holding a thermal bucket and listened in silence as they talked about topics that I couldn't understand at all. The intense discussion suddenly stopped. The two of them finally reached a consensus on a certain issue. There was an admiring light in Leo's eyes. Good. Let's go with your plan. I felt empty inside. I had never seen Leo with such an expression before. While I was lost in thought, Vivian tilted her chin in my direction. "Leo, your little girlfriend is here." He turned around and glanced at me. Correcting her, "She's my wife." Oh, right. Look at me. I always call her wrong. After all, there aren't many people who get married so young like you. I nervously put down the thermal bucket. I suddenly felt that I didn't belong here. When I was leaving, I heard Vivian ask Leo, "Your wife doesn't seem to be in the same line of work as you. What does she do?" "She's a teacher." Leo seemed reluctant to talk about me in a work setting. However, Vivian kept asking, "I also have friends who are teachers in universities. Maybe they're colleagues. Is she a high school teacher or a university teacher?" "She's still taking the exam for a teaching position." Oh, I see. No wonder she has time to bring you meals. Don't worry. It's easy to pass the exam for a teaching position nowadays. However, the thing that seemed easy in Vivian's eyes, I failed at. Because I hadn't been able to find a job for a long time. My university counselor contacted me some time ago and said that he could introduce a job to me. But because the workplace was in another province, Leo firmly opposed my going there. He lowered his head and flipped through the administrative aptitude test papers scattered on the table. He smiled softly, seemingly trying to encourage me. "Serena, this isn't difficult. Put in a little more effort next time, and you'll definitely pass the exam." I bit my lip and couldn't say anything. Leo seemed to have forgotten that I wasn't naturally smart. For math problems that others could understand after doing them once, I needed to do them 10 times to understand. I didn't have many other advantages. Just the ability to persevere. Especially when it came to chasing him. Leo was a genius student who always ranked first in the grade and exams. I was an art student majoring in art and always ranked at the bottom of the grade and exams. Back then, in order to be closer to his school, I buried myself in hard work in the art studio every day. My fingers were blistered from the paintbrush. And I barely managed to get into the second-tier normal university next to his. Whose standard exactly did Leo's, not difficult, refer to? It was obvious. I started having frequent dreams. In my dreams, the person standing beside Leo wasn't me. It was Vivian, Asa Vivian, who was more in tune with him and matched him well. I couldn't catch up with his footsteps no matter how hard I tried. No matter how I called him. He didn't look back. Perhaps he noticed that I had been in a low mood for several days. After our intimate moment that day, Leo pulled me into his arms. Wife, I'm not busy during this period. Let's hold a make-up for wedding. By the way, I'll take a half-month vacation to accompany you on a honeymoon to change your mood. How about it? Just like that. I was easily coaxed by Leo. However, holding a wedding wasn't as simple as I had imagined. Even though we hired a wedding planning company, I couldn't help but worry about the venue decoration, the wedding banquet menu, the bride's bouquet, and so on. After all, this was the only wedding of my life. Just for the design of the wedding candy box, I stayed up several late nights in a row, putting in even more effort than when I did my graduation project. In the evening, I excitedly showed the freshly designed draft to Leo. He quickly looked up from the computer and took a glance. Yeah. It's okay. It's good. I frowned at the draft and said, I really can't decide between these two candy box designs. Honey. Help me take a look. This one has a larger capacity. And this one is more delicate. Leo didn't know who he was sending a message to. There was a slight smile at the corners of his eyes. But he still replied to me, either one is fine. I suddenly didn't want to continue talking. Seeing that I was silent, Leo closed the computer, put his arm around my waist, and made me sit on his lap. Wife, where were you just now? I tried to force a smile. It's okay. You can be busy first. Actually, hadn't the soba in session. It's not that important. A week before the wedding, I went out to bring Leo his meal as usual. As soon as I got home, I received a call from the wedding planning company, saying that an important part of the wedding process had been changed temporarily, and I needed to choose one of the two plans as soon as possible. I couldn't make up my mind, and when I called Leo, no one answered. When I rushed to the entrance of their company in a hurry, I saw Leo expressionlessly pouring the meal I had given him into the trash can. Vivian stood beside him with her arms crossed and teased him. You really don't know how lucky you are. Your wife is so good to you. And you're still not satisfied? He said words of complaint. But his tone was completely different. Do you think I want to waste food? It's just because I was discussing the project progress with you. And the meal has been left out for so long that it's too cold to eat now. Alright. Alright. I understand what you mean. This meal is on me. Just tell me what you want to eat. Leo put the thermal bucket back in its original state. His movements were clean and neat, as if he had done this countless times before. Finally, Haddington fell away, as if thinking of something. He sighed, sometimes she's just too good to me. With her being like this, I actually feel a lot of pressure. At that moment, I seemed to smell the stench of the rotten food in the trash can. I felt nauseous and fled in a hurry. Leo called me several times in a row. In the past, no matter when or where, as long as it was his call, I would always answer it immediately. But this time, I directly turned off my phone. When he rushed home, he saw me sitting on the carpet with red and swollen eyes. And there were piles of shredded paper scraps around me. These were the love letters I wrote to Leo in high school. There were a total of 18 letters. They carried all my love. He recognized them and immediately stepped forward to stop me. Serena, what are you doing? And what's going on with the wedding? Why did you suddenly call the wedding company to cancel it? I desperately broke free from him. I picked up a complete love letter and tore it in front of him. It was like exposing our relationship, which seemed intact on the surface but was actually already broken beyond repair. I looked at him and said word by word, maybe in your eyes, I'm no different from a kitten. You can just wave your hand and tease me when you need me. And leave me alone infuriately when you don't. You don't want to spend time on me. You're not curious about what I'm thinking. What I say doesn't matter. And my emotions don't matter either. Leo, do you think getting married to me is your condescending favor? Leo firmly grasped my wrist. Is it because of Vivian? Someone saw you come to find me this afternoon. I shook my head. If it wasn't Vivian, there would be Zhang Li'an or Li Weiran. But he didn't believe me and patiently explained to me. I've already said that she and I are just ordinary colleagues. We haven't even been alone privately at all. If you don't believe me, you can check my phone. Check my chat records. Check anything you want. Seeing that I kept shaking my head, he finally got angry. Serena, do you really not trust me that much? Do you really have to make a fuss about this? But I suddenly calmed down. Look, Leo. Even at this moment, you still think I'm being unreasonable. Sometimes I think that, in fact, we're not suitable for each other at all. And it's all me forcing things. I can never understand the model algorithms and advanced terms you talk about. And you're not interested in the comics and movies I talk about at all. You don't like it when I touch your things without permission. And you don't like sharing your work and life with me. If I talk to any of your male colleagues a little more, you can give me a cold face for a whole night. But Leo, my heart is also made of flesh. I can be sad and heartbroken too. Even so, I'm still trying my best to be good to you. Because you said that I'm the only family member you have in this world. But I've taken 99 steps towards you. And you're not even willing to take one more step towards me. Even worse, you're avoiding me and stepping back. My nose felt sour. And tears flowed out involuntarily. Leo, I'm so tired. Over the years, I've been chasing after Leo with full enthusiasm. It was he who took the initiative to reach out to me. It was he who said he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. I believed him. I offered my sincere heart without reservation. However, my unrequited efforts were like a stone sinking into the sea. And there was no response at all, leaving me in despair. I started to feel confused, worried about losing what I had. I became jealous and ugly. I became someone I didn't recognize. I don't know what the meaning of such a marriage is anymore. Under Leo's gaze, I slowly took off my ring. With all my strength, I forced myself to say those words. Leo, let's get a divorce. His eyes turned red, and his voice trembled a little. Are you sure? Leo is such a proud person. Naturally, having fulfilled my desire, he won't bow down to me. And it's impossible for him to try to keep me. I know that. I watched as his eyes gradually turned cold. Fine, having fulfilled my desire. You said it. Serena. Since you want a divorce, don't regret it later. When the class reunion was in the second half, a blizzard suddenly hit. The hot spring manor we rented happened to be on a mountain. So I had to change my plan and stay in the manor with everyone for one night, and then drive away when the snowstorm subsided a bit the next morning. When we were soaking in the hot spring, the girls chatted casually. I had a crush on the sports committee member in high school. Now, sigh. I can only say that time is a butcher's knife. Yeah. I didn't expect that the naughtiest boy in our class before could become so steady after becoming a father. Only Leo doesn't seem to have changed much before and after marriage. By the way, speaking of Leo, he wasn't even on our reunion list. I asked the class monitor and found out that he pushed a project kickoff meeting in Kenya temporarily. It's really strange. In high school, Leo always came and went alone. And I didn't see him having a good enough relationship with anyone in the class to come to the class reunion on purpose. Somehow, I clicked on that familiar phone number. In the past 3 years, Leo has sent me a total of 3 text messages. The first one was in the first month after the divorce. You left a few pieces of clothes in my closet. Do you want to come and get them this weekend? The second one was during the spring festival in the second year after the divorce. I brought some things to visit your parents. I'm downstairs at your house now. The third one only had 3 words. Serena. Probably he regretted sending it out as soon as he sent it, and we don't know what he wanted to say later. I didn't reply to any of his messages. The moment the seal was stamped on the divorce certificate, I had already decided to completely cut off my feelings for him. If it weren't for this class reunion, Leo and I would probably never have anything to do with each other for the rest of our lives. After soaking in the hot spring, I parted ways with everyone in the lobby. They had other entertainment activities, and I was going back to my room to sleep. From a distance, I saw Leo standing in the corridor with his arms crossed, as if waiting for someone. I walked past him without looking sideways. He called out to me, "Serena." I ignored him and lowered my head to open the door with the room card, but someone pressed the doorknob. Leo's tone finally changed. "Serena. Make it clear. What's going on with the blind date?" I'm getting more and more confused about Leo. It's been 3 years since we got divorced. Why does he still have the right to interfere in my private life? At this time, the classmates who are night owls have made an appointment to go to the chess and card room to play board games all night. I didn't want to be seen by others, but Leo forcefully grabbed my wrist and dragged me outside. "Serena. Let's have a talk." I couldn't break free, and a sudden burst of anger welled up in my heart. I snapped at him in an unfriendly tone. "I have nothing to talk to you about. Things are just as you heard. I'm not young anymore. What's wrong with going on a blind date?" He didn't stop his actions. "I don't allow it." I smiled and reminded him, "Leo, have you forgotten that we're already divorced?" I don't know which nerve of his this sentence touched. And he said resentfully, "I know. Of course I know. After all, we've known each other for so many years. Don't I even have the right to ask about it?" I finally shook him off. Before I could speak, someone else spoke first. "Serena. Leo, Hedda, you're still up? It's just right that you're not asleep. The class monitor is still in the room talking on the phone with his wife. We're short of some people. Do you want to come and play with us?" I didn't want to be pestered by Leo anymore, so I quickly agreed. Unexpectedly, Heading fulfilled my obsession. He followed us like a shadow. During the game of truth or dare, a male classmate who wasn't very familiar with me drew the chance to ask a question, and I happened to be the one to be punished. He didn't make things difficult for me. Symbolically, he chose truth, and asked me where I was working now. After I told them, everyone was very surprised. "Wow. Serena. So you first worked as a teacher in an art training institution, and then you were recruited by a student's parent to work as an illustrator for children's picture books in a publishing house. Right? You basically changed your career directly. I really admire you. I hate my current job so much, but I don't have the courage like you to start all over again." The class beauty who used to like Leo spoke in a sarcastic tone beside us. "What's there to admire about that? It's more admirable to see a man and a woman pulling and tugging at each other in the middle of the night. Anyway, I wouldn't do that." Leo and I came together. With the class beauty's exaggerated description, it's hard for everyone not to think too much. Their gossipy and speculative eyes turned towards me, as if they were saying, "Leo already has a family. How can Serena still be so shameless as to throw herself at him?" I looked at Leo, waiting for him to take the initiative to explain the truth to everyone. But all I got from him was silence. Maybe he was still angry, so he wanted to punish me in this way. Or maybe in his eyes, having been married to me was something that was hard to talk about and devalued him. I don't doubt at all, and if I hadn't called him husband in his company back then, he wouldn't even have disclosed our relationship to his colleagues. Later, the class monitor came over and livened up the atmosphere again. When we played the game, you don't have, the atmosphere gradually heated up. In order not to be punished and have to drink, everyone went all out when it was their turn to speak. I was shown a video of my good friend being affectionate with my ex-boyfriend. None of you have experienced that, right? Drink up. Drink up. What's that? In the year when I was the most infatuated, I even paid the hotel fee for my ex-boyfriend and his girlfriend. A muscular sports student spoke up quietly, and his words were astonishing. "I've cooked with someone of the same sex." A gentle girl finally made the game a bit more normal. "I have a daughter." Someone said, "Hey. Serena didn't drink. You can't cheat like this." I could have gotten away with it, but I suddenly didn't want to do that. I looked at Leo and said revengefully word by word, "I'm not cheating." The whole room fell silent instantly. The cup in Leo's hand dropped to the ground and shattered. I achieved my goal. This game finally ended when Leo pulled me away on the spot. Everyone quickly guessed more or less I had been married to Leo, then divorced him. And after the divorce, I gave birth to a daughter. People gradually sent me messages, "So Leo came for you today. Is this a real-life version of the running away with the baby and getting back together literature? Serena, don't not cherish it. A man like Leo is hard to find even with a lantern now. I still trust my brother's character. He has done so much for you. So just forgive him." Obviously, felt my sigh. These people didn't just send the messages to me. Leo raised his phone and said to me, "It seems that everyone is really looking forward to our getting back together." I turned off the screen and said, "Then their expectations will be dashed." He calmly poured me a glass of water, curled his lips into a smile, and said, "Serena, don't be duplicitous. If you have no feelings for me, why did you give birth to this child?" I found out I was pregnant just a month after getting divorced from Leo. The doctor said that if I had an abortion, it might be very difficult for me to get pregnant again considering my physical condition. After much consideration, I decided to give birth to the child. My parents had firmly opposed my being a single mother at first. But it so happened that there was good news that our old house in the urban village was going to be demolished soon. Having one more person in the household meant getting an extra apartment. Their attitude changed immediately. And the child in my belly suddenly became the little lucky star of the family. After my daughter was born, I named her Sunny. I hope she will be confident, optimistic, and have everything under control. Sunny is only 3 years old, but she can already do addition and subtraction within 100. Her intellectual talent is indeed thanks to Leo's genes. I said matter-of-factly. Because I think your genes are quite good. Leo's face gradually darkened. So, you used me as a free sperm bank? That seems to be right when put that way. I nodded, which was a kind of tacit admission. He suddenly stood up. Good, very good. Serena, you're amazing. This was the last thing Leo said to me at this class reunion. I admit that I deliberately provoked him. I thought that since I had said those words, Leo probably wouldn't pester me anymore. However, a week later, he appeared downstairs in my house again. Leo glanced down at the vegetable basket in my hand and said with a smile in his voice, "Didn't you say you were going on a blind date? Why didn't you go?" Seeing that I ignored him, he added, "I bought some toys for our daughter. Since it's almost the spring festival, I dropped by to visit my father-in-law and mother-in-law." As he spoke, he looked up. "Your cousin came so early?" "My family lives on the 3rd floor." I followed Leo's gaze. Under the red hollow window grills, a young man was playing with building blocks with Sunny. He lifted her up from time to time, making her laugh all the time. Actually, Leo had met my cousin during the spring festival before. Maybe he didn't pay much attention, so he mistook the person. I retracted my gaze and told him seriously, "He's not my cousin. He's my boyfriend." Leo's expression twisted for a moment. But soon, he sneered. "Serena, that's a really clumsy excuse. You were the one who was going on a blind date, and you're also the one who has a boyfriend. Do you think I'll believe it? The boyfriend is real, and being urged to go on a blind date is also real. But I'm too lazy to explain to him. If he doesn't believe it, so be it." I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm and wouldn't let me go. Neighbors passed by one after another and kept looking back at us. I had no choice but to agree to take him upstairs. My parents were cooking in the kitchen, and Morris came to open the door. He was wearing a white knitted sweater, exuding a youthful and masculine atmosphere. He took a look at Leo behind me, and his smile became even brighter. "Sister is back?" And he kissed me on the cheek as if there was no one else around. Leo's face darkened immediately. Morris must have done it on purpose, because he immediately took on the stance of a proper boyfriend and poured tea for Leo. I know you. Ex-husband." Sunny was playing with a wiggle car in the living room. Leo tried to save some face for himself. He picked up the rabbit doll from the shopping bag, walked up to her, and squatted down. "Sunny, I'm your dad. Come on. Call me Dad. Under his constant urging, Sunny burst into tears with a wow sound. She grabbed the ears of the rabbit doll and randomly hit him with it. Ooh. You're not. Who? The one who treats Mom well is my dad. Leo was so stunned by the beating that he sat on the ground like a deflated balloon. Even though Sunny didn't use much force. Morris, not minding making things worse, picked up Sunny and coaxed her while asking, Sunny, would you like me to be your dad? Sunny gradually stopped sobbing and said in a childish voice, okay. There seemed to be countless tiny sparks in the air. As soon as these two people looked at each other, there was a crackling sound. Before the atmosphere became more tense, I said to Leo, you've seen your daughter. And you've delivered the things. You can leave now. He glanced at Sunny, suppressed his voice, and gritted his teeth. Serena, are you in such a hurry to drive me away and can't wait to be sweet with your little boyfriend? At this moment, my mother came out of the kitchen. It's the spring festival. Leo, stay and have lunch with us. Leo naturally agreed readily. While I was going to the bathroom, my mother pulled me aside. Sure enough, she started persuading me to get back together with Leo. Serena, you're still young. Listen to your mother's advice. Marriage requires mutual tolerance and understanding. Don't be so stubborn. If you don't want a man like Leo, others will be eager to have him. You'll regret it in the future. Didn't you say that Morris will go abroad to study after the vacation? Do you want to have a long-distance relationship after that? Do you really think that with the age difference between you two and with you having a daughter, you can have a future together? I can see that Leo wants to get back together with you. Mom won't urge you to go on a blind date anymore. Think about it carefully. Even if you don't consider yourself. Think about Sunny. Look, including my parents. Everyone thinks I'm being silly. They don't understand why I insisted on divorcing Leo when he didn't make any principled mistakes in our marriage. They don't understand why I'm still stubbornly sticking to my decision when Leo, now successful, comes back to me and asks for a reunion. In their eyes, Leo is a smart top student, a successful son-in-law, a compatible colleague, and a wealthy boss. But in my life, he was a cold and selfish husband. However, Morris is different. He was the first one to let me experience another possibility in an intimate relationship. It turns out that love can also be equal, healthy, and passionate. I first met Morris in a bookstore. Every weekend, I liked to stay there and watch the children reading my picture books with great interest. My heart is filled with happiness. However, a grown-up came that day. When I casually doodled before, Leo told me more than once, Serena, you're already so old. Why are you still so childish? So, I naturally feel a sense of shame when an adult reads my children's picture books. But the guy in front of me seemed to really like them. He even bought my entire set of picture books. That's why I remembered him. Later, he came to our publishing house for an internship. I then learned that his name was Morris. And he was a senior majoring in English literature at Leo School. Since the topic of his graduation project was the translation of children's literature works, he took the initiative to offer to be my assistant and help translate my picture books for overseas distribution. Morris always seemed to understand my strange ideas. For example, the story of a rabbit without ears finding an egg, or the story of a crocodile born into a duck family. One day, he was reading my manuscript. The Miss Brown Bear, who was so hungry that she looked like a bear, asked for directions everywhere in order to find the honey mountain that the bees mentioned. Mr. Cat told her that the honey mountain was next to the milk lake, and Miss Dog told her that the honey mountain was near the bone tower. Aunt Crow said that she had to cross the bread bridge. Wait. He suddenly realized. So there's no such thing as a honey mountain at all. Miss Brown Bear was deceived. I bit my pen and my thoughts wandered freely. Maybe there really is one. As long as she keeps climbing and climbing until she reaches the highest hill. After the summer internship ended, Morris started to pursue me directly. After learning that I had a daughter, he didn't back down. Instead, he said, I like your interesting soul. It has nothing to do with your age or other identities. I already knew that Morris was going to study abroad, so from the very beginning, I didn't plan to be with this guy who was 5 years younger than me. until he said he was willing to stay for me. I refused him more firmly. So he took a step back. Then let's be together until the winter vacation. Sister. I don't expect too much. Just give me 3 months. He said with a hint of sadness. You're my first love. It was hard to say the words of refusal anymore. Actually, I knew in my heart that I had already fallen for him. So I agreed to him. 3 months. Just enough for us not to have any regrets. After the meal, my parents took Sunny out for a walk. Morris mysteriously pulled me into the bedroom and handed me a photo like he was showing off a treasure. Sister. Look. Is this my exclusive wedding photo? Half a month ago, a friend dragged me to a photo studio to take artistic photos. During the break, Morris came to pick me up. He borrowed a veil from the adjacent photography studio and quietly pinned it to my hair bun. I knew nothing about it at that time. He called me, and at the moment I turned my head, he pressed the shutter. I had never told Morris the details of my relationship with Leo. Naturally, hadn't so felt my ancestor. He wouldn't know that this was the first wedding photo in my life. The girl in the photo had a sparkle in her eyes and a bright and radiant smile. It turns out that love is something that will show in your eyes, even if you tried to hide it. While I was lost in thought, Morris leaned against the table corner and kissed me clumsily. Feeling my response, he accidentally bumped his knee against the chair. Leo's voice suddenly sounded outside the door. Serena. What are you two doing? Morris and I were passionately kissing in the room. The knocking on the door outside kept going. At this moment, I only had one thought: why hasn't Leo left yet? So annoying. Later, Leo's knocking on the door almost reached the point of disturbing the neighbors. Only then did Morris let go of me. He opened the locked door, licked his lips impatiently, and said, Ex-husband. Sister and I are in a serious relationship. What do you think we're doing? Leo looked at my red and swollen lips, and his eyes turned red as well. He pushed Morris aside regardless and barged into my bedroom. On the bookshelf right in front of the door of my room, there was a full row of newly arrived sample copies of English picture books. My name and Morris's name were written side by side in the most prominent position. He averted his gaze as if trying to escape, and then he saw the photo on the table. He stared blankly at my bright and dazzling smile in the photo, and it took him a long time to speak. This was the first time I saw him being so humble. Serena. I heard the conversation between you and your mother. Your little boyfriend will go abroad soon. And Sunny is still young. She can't grow up in an environment without a father's love. I know you're still in the honeymoon period and won't listen to me. It doesn't matter. I can. He took a deep breath and seemed to make up his mind. I can wait for you two to break up. Morris sneered. Ex-husband. Wake up. Sister doesn't love you anymore. Even if you want to be the third party for love, she doesn't care. Leo didn't bother me again until after the spring festival. And just the day before yesterday, Morris had flown to the United States to study abroad. Before we parted, he kissed me in the airport, and I tasted the salty and bitter tears on his lips. He whispered in my ear, Thank you, sister, for these 3 months you've given me. I've been very happy. I'll tell you a secret. Actually, I fell in love with you at first sight. My heart ached. I thought I had overestimated myself after all. I was far from being able to bid him farewell as calmly as I had imagined. But I had to pull myself together. As I was going to Bologna, Italy, to participate in the award selection of the International Children's Book Fair. Unexpectedly, not long after I got in the car, Leo started calling me non-stop. When he called for the 10th time, I couldn't help but answer and scold him. Leo, what on earth are you doing now? He growled. Serena. You're not allowed to leave. Stop the car. I couldn't understand his incomprehensible words. I glanced at the rearview mirror and was stunned. Leo was driving his black SUV and was actually chasing my car like crazy. Leo. What are you doing? You're crazy. He jerked the steering wheel and overtook a sedan. I'm crazy. If I'm crazy, you'll stay for me. Before he could finish, there was a loud crash from behind. I couldn't see the black SUV in the rearview mirror anymore. I quickly asked the driver to pull over. Leo had indeed had an accident. Fortunately, having fulfilled the obsession, the car accident wasn't too serious. Leo had just made a sudden U-turn to avoid a pedestrian and crashed into the guardrail. After I called the emergency number 120 for him, I was about to leave. Unexpectedly, he quickly pushed open the car door and collapsed on his knees on the ground. His forehead was bleeding, but he grabbed me, his eyes full of pleading, like a dog that nobody wanted. "Serena, I regret it. I've regretted it for a long time. Please, don't go with him. Okay?" Only then did I realize that Leo seemed to have misunderstood something. But he soon fainted and was carried onto a stretcher by the arriving ambulance. Of course, I still left. After all, this participation in the award evaluation was of great importance to me. When I returned to China a week later, out of humanitarianness, I symbolically went to the hospital to visit him. Leo had a broken leg and a bandage on his head. Sitting on the bed, he asked me listlessly, "Are you back? Where's your little boyfriend?" I said calmly, "We broke up." He lost his grip on the cup in his hand, and the water spilled on the quilt, soaking a large area. Leo just said, "Oh," indifferently. But his spirits immediately lifted, and the joy in his eyes couldn't be hidden. 2 days later, after I got off work, I received a call from the nurse's station. "Hello. Are you Leo's family member? The patient has a rehabilitation arrangement today, and needs a family member to accompany him." Since then, I have received several similar calls every week. I've even learned to answer them before they finish speaking. "Okay. I know. I've seen Leo's X-ray films." According to Reason, his broken leg wasn't a serious case, but it still hadn't healed. For this reason, my mother specially stewed pig bones and asked me to take them to him to help with his recovery. But my mother seemed to have figured something out. For the sake of my marriage, she decided to take multiple measures. Recently, she has been planning to introduce the son of one of her old classmates to me. After learning that this blind date partner was a doctor and worked in the building next to where Leo was hospitalized, I didn't refuse. I just happened to have something I wanted to verify. I deliberately set the blind date location at the coffee shop downstairs of the inpatient building. This drive. Song was 3 years older than me. He had had a wife, but she had died during childbirth. He had been reluctant to remarry for all these years and had only agreed to meet me because of his parents' pressure. I was then relieved and no longer had a psychological burden. Not long after, Leo called. "Serena, why didn't I see you in the rehabilitation department? Where have you gone?" I calmly took a sip of tea and said, "I'm having a blind date at the coffee shop downstairs. I'll come later." Then I turned on the stopwatch timer on my phone. When the number scrolled to 4 minutes and 32 seconds, Leo appeared, panting on crutches. I had calculated in advance that for a person with limited mobility, this journey should take at least more than 10 minutes to walk. Leo's broken leg had already healed a long time ago. He had been pretending all along. I stared at him and raised the timer, saying sarcastically, "Wow. Has a medical miracle happened?" Suddenly, he clutched his stomach and said in a weak voice, "Serena, I don't feel well." I no longer believed him. Leo, using the same trick once or twice is enough. His lips turned pale, and he reached out his hand to me. But before he could touch me, he fainted to the ground. Leo had had a stomach problem for several years. I had repeatedly reminded him, but he still didn't eat on time. Now, it had finally developed into gastric cancer. Fortunately, having fulfilled my obsession, it was in the middle stage, and it wasn't beyond the point of being incurable. After the surgical removal of some of the lesions, Leo seemed to have aged a lot in an instant. When I went to visit him, he was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling and murmuring, "These days, I seem to have suddenly understood a lot of things. My heart seems to have been sick for a long time. I always wanted to test your love by pushing you away again and again. And when you held me tightly, I didn't believe that I was worthy of being loved. So I backed away and remained silent time and time again, hurting you completely." As he spoke, he began to choke up. "Serena, I'm sorry for you all these years. I was so wrong. This is all my retribution. I deserve it. I'm a wretch. I deserve to die." even though Leo had deeply hurt me in the past. At this moment, I didn't feel the pleasure of getting revenge. On the contrary, my heart felt as if a stone was pressing on it. I waved my hand and said, "All right. Just actively cooperate with the treatment and don't think too much." Leo pointed to the iron box under the bed, indicating that I should open it and take a look. It turned out that there were 18 love letters inside, stuck together with transparent tape and as hard as a brick. "Serena, I mended them. I thought I could fix them." I took out one of the letters. I held this tender but passionate love letter up to the sunlight. It immediately became full of holes. "Leo, look. No matter how hard you try to restore something that's already broken to its original state, there will inevitably be cracks." He let out a long sigh. Yes, you're right. Perhaps this was the first time Leo had realized there was really no going back between us. When I left the hospital, I unexpectedly ran into an acquaintance head-on. Vivian was pregnant, and her blonde and blue-eyed husband was supporting her as they came down the stairs. She also recognized me. After saying a few words to her husband, she walked towards me. "Hi, Serena. Long time no see." 3 years had passed, and I could finally look her in the eyes and greet her naturally, no longer feeling that inexplicable sense of inferiority. It turned out that Vivian had taken the initiative to leave the company after Leo and I got divorced. Although Leo didn't say it, she could feel that there was blame in Leo's eyes when he looked at her. After all, on the day when the conflict between Leo and me broke out, Vivian had indeed pulled Leo to discuss the project progress, causing Leo to miss the meal time and for me to see him pouring away the food. She also felt bad about it herself and even went to see a psychologist because of this matter and blamed herself. "Okay. Don't look at me with that guilty look. If it weren't for this matter, I wouldn't have met my current husband." Seeing her say this, I felt even more embarrassed and apologized to her, saying that I had been jealous of her before. "Oh, honey. Don't say that. I hope you can use another word." "What word?" "Admiration. I'd rather you tell me that you admire me very much." When we talked about Leo's recent situation, Vivian wasn't surprised at all. He brought it on himself. He's a typical case of an avoidant attachment personality, caused by a lack of love in childhood. He's selfish and contradictory, only caring about his own feelings and not those of his partner. It's also very difficult for him to compromise for his partner. To sum it up, when you love him, he doesn't love you. Only when you don't love him does he love you to the core. I can only say that it's a good thing you got out of that miserable situation in time. Finally, having fulfilled my exi, we exchanged contact information. "When my baby is born, don't forget to send him a set of your children's picture books." She waved goodbye to me and winked playfully. "By the way, I want the signed version." After a year of post-operative chemotherapy, Leo had basically recovered. The doctor said that as long as he took good care of himself and didn't do anything stupid again, he could live to be quite old. But he seemed to be addicted to self-abuse. Before he was discharged from the hospital, he mumbled that he had had another minor operation. Later, I found out that he had had a vasectomy. He also went to a lawyer in advance to make a will, leaving all his property to me and our daughter. When we met for the last time, he held me back and asked in a soft voice, "Serena, is there really no possibility for us at all?" But before I could speak, I had to, he said to himself, "Forget it. Don't say anything. At least, let me have something to hold on to." 2 years later, in the publishing house, everyone tacitly put their hands together, as if they were performing some strange ritual. During a break from my drawing, I raised my head and couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" They said, "The list of the International Hans Christian Andersen Award is about to be announced." We're all so nervous. Only the person involved is still so calm. Someone even started making negative predictions. After all, it's the Nobel Prize of the children's literature world. There aren't many painters in our country who can be nominated. In short, the hope is slim. It's just important to participate. At this moment, a voice sounded. I instinctively looked diagonally ahead. Everyone was in an uproar. "How is it? How is it? Tell us quickly. Don't keep us in suspense." "Of course it's on the short list." At that moment, it felt like a dream. Before I could jump up excitedly, everyone rushed over and cheered as they threw me up in the air. My dream when I was a child was very simple. When everyone else was dreaming of becoming scientists or astronauts, I just wanted to bring happiness to every child. Perhaps I still have a long way to go, but I'm sure I'm already on the way. It was already late, and a delivery guy came in holding a bouquet of flowers. Serena. Who is Serena? Someone sent flowers. Come and sign for them. Everyone heckle. The flower language of the Hydrangi is reunion and reunion. Serena. Who sent you these flowers? I took the flowers. And a card fell out of them. I picked it up, and the flamboyant handwriting on it read, "Congratulations, my Miss Brown Bear, on finding your honey mountain." My heart started to beat faster. And I quickly asked the delivery guy, "Where's the person who sent the flowers? Have they already left?" The guy said, "No, they haven't left. The person is still waiting for you outside." I ran outside as fast as I could. Someone was standing in the darkness, opening their arms to me. When I threw myself into Morris's arms, I remembered a sentence Vivian had said to me. "Serena, a good love can make people grow. Congratulations. It seems that you've already met the right person." The end of the full text.